Today we're going to get you started learning HTML. HTML is hypertext markup language, and it's the language used to write web pages. Our goal is for you to develop a fundamental understanding of HTML as a language, and you're going to know some basic structures, syntax, and elements. What is HTML? HTML is often referred to as the language of the web. It's used to create web pages, and it is short for hypertext markup language. This is the language that your browser reads and interprets to draw a web page to your screen. Sir Tim Berners-Lee, the guy who created the World Wide Web, also created HTML. HTML is a technology that is critical, vital to be able to having the World Wide Web, because you need to be able to author web pages which contain information that can be shared with others. There is the W3C, which is an organization that oversees the standards for HTML and other technologies. What makes the World Wide Web powerful, what makes the internet powerful, is that everyone has decided to do the same things. You need to have standards, common ways of doing things in order for this not to turn into chaos. You will often see this orange 5. That is because the current version of HTML is HTML5, the 5th version. Now, just like any language evolves, technical languages like HTML evolve. They just evolve a lot quicker. What do web pages consist of? Web pages are made up of HTML elements. They're like building blocks of a web page. In this example, I have two elements. I have an H1 element, which stands for the largest heading you can put on a page, and then I have an image element. Over here is what you might see on the screen. What your browser does is it interprets these elements and knows how to interpret them to show things on the page to you. So if you want to put a big heading on a web page, you could use an H1 element. You might give it the content, buy your t-shirt now. This is what we call marking something up. This is the text you want to see on the screen, and you mark it up, include it in the page using an H1 element. And then let's say you wanted to have a picture. This is the picture of D's Nuts' failed presidential run. And to do that, you would use an image element. So web pages consist of HTML elements. You write your HTML elements in HTML, but what the user sees is the final result, which is interpreted by the browser. To put elements on a page, you use something called tags. Just like the example I just showed you, the H1, the content being marked up, would be between a set of tags. This is a start tag, and this is an end tag. This denotes when the element begins and when it ends. Same thing for our image. The image is a tag. You're probably noticing, however, that the image only has a single tag. And these are a special type of element called void elements, which we'll get to in a minute. Once again, web pages are made up of HTML elements. You place elements on the screen using what are called tags. You will see start tags, end tags, and sometimes you will see elements that only have a start tag. What does a tag look like? Remember, the tag is used to author content for your web pages. You want to put an HTML element on your page, you need to use tags. So let's take a closer look at the heading. So H1 is my element, and here is my start tag. You'll see that it has a left angle bracket and a right angle bracket that surrounds the H1. Then I have content in the middle. This is what we are marking up. And then when I'm done with my content, I will put in an end tag. You will see that there is a slash here, and then H1 enclosed in a left and right angle bracket. So this is what we call syntax. These are the language rules. You need to be able to be good at this because you need to be precise. The browser will look at this code, this start tag, content, end tag, and will interpret it to be able to put this big bolded message on your web page. So how do I use tags to mark up content? Normally, you start with the start tag, you put the content you want marked up in between, and you end with an end tag. There are exceptions, however. Make sure that after you watch this video, you go back to the presentation and you watch any videos and answer any of the questions that you see alongside. Let's talk about void elements. In our example, we put an image on our page. You will notice that all the image element has is a start tag. Okay? There is no end tag. We call these void elements because they do not require end or closing tags. So a void element is a special type of element where you only need a start tag. Something else I want to draw your attention to is that you'll see that inside the start tag, I have what's called an attribute. In this case, src. And then it says equal dsnuts.jpg. What this is, this attribute, is telling the element, this is the image I want you to display on the screen. So attributes are extremely important and they go within your start tags. They help refine how the element should behave. So attributes, they refine HTML elements. Let's take a closer look. For an image, the page needs to know what image should it go fetch and put on the screen. In order to do that, you need to provide additional information. So attributes are used to provide that additional information. So here I am, I have an image element. All I have is a start tag because it is a void element. It doesn't require a closing tag. src is my attribute name. Then I have my equal sign. Then I have my attribute value, which in this case is what is the image I want to put on the page. Then there's a space and I have another attribute called alt. And then the value that I want to assign to the alt attribute. Alt is an attribute that is used with images. If an image cannot load, it will show the alternative text, in this case, D's Nuts shirt instead. So attributes help you provide additional information to the elements that you put on the page. Let's take a moment to talk about what a web page is. A web page is like you. It has one head and one body in that order. This is how every web page is structured. If you look at the example, you'll see that there is an HTML element. It has a start and end tag, an opening and closing tag. This is what we call the root element. Inside the root element, there is a head. That is an element with a starting and ending tag. And below that, there is a body. There's a starting and closing tag for that as well. So this is the anatomy, the basic structure of a web page. It's just like you. It has one head and one body in that order. The head and the body are contained within what's called the root element. There's a little bit more to it that you need to know. Every web page starts with what's called a doctype. This is short for document type. Since there are so many different versions of HTML now, and since it's going to evolve in the future, the first thing that goes on your page is a special element that tells the browser what version of HTML you're working with. In this case, the doctype simply says HTML, which is short for HTML5. Remember, a web page is like you. It has one head and one body in that order. The head contains something called metadata. Metadata is a fancy word for data about data. So anything that is information about the page that's needed to construct the page goes in the head. This includes things like the title and links to scripts and style sheets, which we'll all get into later. The body contains the page's content. So I want you to think about yourself. Your head contains thoughts. They're critical to you functioning as a human being, but no one can see your thoughts. Your body, however, is what you present to the world. It's what everyone can see. When you're thinking about what a web page is and how it's structured, I want you to think about it the same way. The head are like the thoughts, and the body is like what you want the outside world to see. If you look behind the scenes in your browser, you've probably F12 before or gone into the developer tools of your browser, and you can actually see all of the HTML that made the page come to life. What's great about web design, what's great about HTML, CSS, and JavaScript is that in order for it to be drawn on the page, your computer has to see all of it. None of the HTML, CSS, or JavaScript that is used to help you interact with the web page is hidden from you, so you can learn so much just by looking behind the scenes. You can steal from others' great ideas, or you can figure out how did they do that. You can go behind the scenes and look at their code. This is done using developer tools. And I have included the shortcuts in here if you're interested in delving further into the HTML behind the pages that you use every day. There's also something called comments. Many times you will write a web page and someone will have to come behind you and work on that web page. So you're sharing the authoring of that web page. Let's say you're working at a company and you write a web page and you want to leave a note for the next developer that's going to have to work on that web page. Well, this right here is the syntax that we use to put comments, to leave notes, annotations for the next person who's going to see your web page. These comments are exactly that. They're comments, they're notes. They do not show up on the page, however. They show up in the HTML, but they are not rendered to the page. So notice how in this example I have a body. Remember, the body is the content of the web page that people see, and I have a paragraph. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. Above that I have a comment. You can see the comment in the HTML, but by the time it's rendered to the page, the person viewing the page cannot see it. So that's what a comment is. Helpful text you leave behind, ignored by the browser, and not shown on the page. You place it within these special set of opening and closing tags. The root element contains the head and the body. Remember, a web page is like you. It has one head and one body in that order. Everything that is on your page, however, is included within this HTML element. It's called the root. You'll also notice in this case I have an attribute called lang, which is set to en. What this is telling your browser is that this page is written in English. Remember, head, body, in that order, always within the root element, which is called HTML. The head, this contains metadata, start tag, end tag, placed within the root before the body. Inside the head, one of the most common elements that you'll see is called the title element. If you've ever gone to a web page and you've seen the name on the browser tab, let's say in Chrome or Firefox, well, this is where it comes from. Whatever you place between the title tag is what will be put on your browser tab. And that goes within the head because it's considered to be metadata, information about the page, not necessarily content. The body element obviously is extremely important. It goes within the root element, within the HTML element, right after the head, just like you. One head, one body in that order. All elements that you want to place on the screen go within this body element. So in this particular case, I have an image element that I want shown on the screen, so it must be placed within my body element. I have included a link here to the Mozilla Developer Network. Just like with any language, you might have to look things up, right? Sometimes you don't know how to spell a word or how to define a word in English, and so you look it up in the dictionary. Well, developers have something like that as well. So we have an HTML element reference that I want you to refer to. If you don't know how to use a body element, a head element, if you don't know what the root element is, or a paragraph or an image, you can go to this reference and you will be able to learn by looking at the examples. Now it's your turn. You're going to practice using these basic HTML elements that I've taught you by completing a simple Mozilla Thimble project. This one is called HTML Basics, and the instructions are simple. All you have to do is click on this tablet, and then there is a tutorial page that shows you exactly how to complete the project. This project is going to introduce you to creating HTML elements using HTML tags. Make sure you follow the tutorial completely, step by step, and that you publish and submit your work. Please remember, you are still responsible for viewing any video in this presentation and clicking on any link. Let me know if you have any questions, and I hope to see you soon.